And for more on the president's broadcast to the nation, public affairs analyst and commentator Kemi Asekun joins me on the news this hour. It's good to have you join us. The president touched on a lot of issues today and major initiatives that have been put in place. But in terms of the content of that speech, would you say it really addressed the concerns of the protesters?
Well, I believe that it really addresses the concerns of the protesters. If you look at some of the initiatives that Mr. President mentioned, you'd realize that some of the things that they're protesting about is what he puts in there for everyone to know. And he also, made mention of the fact that he understands that the ball stops on his table. And that already is taking leadership. You would recall that in the presidential speech, he also showed concern for the loss of lives and property. And the reason why it is better for the protesters to come to the negotiating table, which is what many of us have believed, before now to be the best approach. Because even before the protest, it was obvious that they had not exhausted all available channels of communication to ensure that the protest would not happen. But then they were being goaded on by political influences and, some of these people who make money from as non-governmental organizations, from international organizations, with a view that what they try to sell, I beg your pardon, is that there is chaos in Nigeria, and that's how they get the grants that they do get. And so for them, it's business. For us in Nigeria, and of course for Mr. President, you can see no Nigerian life ought to have been lost. No property ought to have been destroyed. People have lost their lives, properties have been destroyed, people's businesses have been looted. The question to now ask is, at the end of the day, how has this benefited the average and the common Nigerian in any way? But Mr. President has said it. One of the things he has mentioned is the fact that the fuel subsidy cannot return. When you look at an economy that is functioning on servicing debt with 97% of its revenue, you know that at some point, that economy will grind to a halt because you are not making profit, but you are actually now servicing debt with 97% of whatever it is that you're earning. That already shows that if something was not drastically done,
All right.
then yes. Let me just quickly add that. But today, Mr. President has made it known that instead of the 97% that was being expended, on debt servicing, we're using 68%. That gives us about 32% left, to function, and it's continuous, it's gradual, it continues to grow.
And in a minute, we'll talk about what you mentioned about the president also reiterating that some persons are taking advantage, undue advantage of the protesters during the course of the week. But some analysts have also identified that it seems that the president is focusing on long-term goals and not the short-term solutions to hunger and poverty and every other economic situation that the country is going through. How do we pacify Nigerians especially not to seek short-term solutions to these problems?
Okay, I think that perhaps the understanding of what Mr. President said is what is lacking. But if you would recall, in part of what the president said, he made mention of the fact that he has removed or he has ordered that tariffs be removed from food items and pharmaceuticals. That already is a short-term plan while they're distributing fertilizers to farmers so that we can have more produce in the next 6 months. So these tariffs are taken away, have been removed for the next 6 months. That, of course, is making things cheaper. Rice was about 80,000 naira earlier in the year. Rice has come down to about 50,000 naira. I'm also aware that rice is now being sold to members of the public from the federal government at 40,000 naira. I think Mr. President's most challenging problem is the fact that the governors are not, working in tandem with the things he's doing. Because when you send 20 trucks of rice to each state, one is expected that the governors will distribute this, properly within their states.
Absolutely. Okay, you can wrap up your speech. Yes.
Okay, one would expect that, the distribution will reduce the prices of goods in the market. if you look at the law of demand and supply. But then I don't know what we need to do to carry the governor or for the governors to fall in line, because the challenge that Mr. President is facing is that over the years, people have always felt that the buck lies on the table of the president. And that's the bastardization of our mentality,
And that speaks, to my next question about, how instructive the speech of the president was as regards taking responsibility for what is going on. And perhaps not much attention has been focused on even the governors and their role in ensuring that the economy is at a good place. But let's also talk about those who the president mentioned that they are taking undue advantage of these protesters in the first place. This is not the first time that even stakeholders are mentioning that to an extent some persons have tried to take advantage of some protestants in this demonstration. So moving forward, how do we focus on addressing the situation and ensuring that the focus is not lost and the posture of the government itself is not misunderstood?
I think that it has to be education, more education, and more education. Nigerians need to understand that this is not the day and the age of the head of state. The president cannot do things via fiat, right? Today, the governors are as responsible for the citizens as the president is. The president has actually almost doubled the allocations that go to the governors per month since the removal of fuel subsidy. So the question to ask the governors are, what or where is this money going into? Besides that, the president has also helped to remove the local government, from the stranglehold of the governors. And you can expect that many of those who had this local government in their coffers will not be happy with what has happened. So these are some of the things. And besides that, right, there are the people you call the merchants of trouble, right? They make money from trouble. There are people who are uncomfortable with the president for removing the fuel subsidy. There are people who have lived large on this subsidy, knowing fully well that when they claim subsidy, the amount of fuel that they bring in is not the amount of fuel, that they have actually brought in actual sense. They will not be happy. And yes, it's very likely that they may want to take advantage of this. There's also the people who make money per week from the forex. So these are some of the things that, Nigerians need to take a look at and ask themselves, do we want to continue to subsidize with an economy that is servicing debt at 97%? There was no way the economy would not have grounded to a halt if Mr. President did not take the decisions he took. And he has come out, to say, yes, the buck stops on my table, but I'm doing the best. Perhaps more communication needs to happen. And, one is looking at it that, yes, Mr. President will tackle that, because at the end of the day, the governors are hiding under the shade of the fact that people still look at Mr. President as head of state, not the president of a democratically government.
Well, thank you very much for that, public affairs analyst and commentator Kemi Asekun. Thank you for joining us on the news this hour.